So I just want to show you, knowing knit and purl stitching, there are lots of options available to you in the kinds of fabric that you create, just with those two stitches. So I just wanted to show you, so here I have a little swatch. The bottom here is just straight up stocking stitch, right? So I knit all the stitches on this side, and then when I reversed and came back the other way, I purled. And this is what you get. You get something called reverse stocking stitch, or sometimes people just call this the purl side, versus stocking stitch or the knit side. But you don't have to exclusively knit on one side and purl on the other. You can use either of those stitches on either side of your knitting, and that actually gives you an opportunity to create different effects. So the first thing, and probably the most common way that you see knits and purls used, is to create ribbing. And you see ribbing like on the cuffs of sleeves or the collar of a sweater. You see it on like a hat brim. Here's a hat that I knit with a 1x1 ribbing, right? Very popular stitch pattern. And all you're doing when you knit a ribbing is you're making columns of knit stitches, purl stitches, knit stitches, purl stitches, knit stitches, purl stitches. And it doesn't matter which side of the fabric you're working on. You're still alternating knits and purls. Another stitch pattern is something called seed stitch, where again you're alternating knits and purls, but you're not lining them up. You're actually alternating not only by stitch across a row, but from row to row. So if you purled on one row, you'll knit on the next row, if you and so on all the way up. And I'll show you what those look like. And these are a couple of other ones. This is something called moss stitch, which is related to seed stitch, except that instead of alternating on every row, you alternate on every other row. So you have 2 rows of knit stitches and 2 rows of purl stitches, 2 rows of knit stitches, 2 rows of purl stitches. And this is something called a broken rib, where you're doing a knit purl alternate. You're alternating between knits and purls on one row, and then on the next row, you're just doing a straight knit stitch or purl stitch, depending on which side you're on. I like to do this by knitting and purling on the reverse side, and then when I get to the front side, I can just knit across. And you're alternating those 2 rows. So let me just show you quickly like how to read the stitches that you're working on, so that you know whether you're knitting or purling. So here is a 1x1 rib, a little sample of that. And this is my column of knit stitches, and the next one is my column of purl stitches. And you can always recognize a purl stitch by this little bump that appears at the base of the stitch. It looks like a little bead almost, right? You can see one there, and you can see one there. And if we look back here, here's a little bead, here's a little bead of yarn, a little bead of yarn. So I know that this is a purl stitch. And so I bring my yarn forward and I purl it, put the yarn back. The next stitch is going to be a knit stitch, right? I can see that big long column of V's going up. Purl stitch. And so once you've identified the one stitch, you're just alternating knits and purls all the way across. Just like this. Then when you flip it, so my last stitch was a purl stitch, right? There's the little bead. So when I flip it, of course, a purl stitch on one side is actually going to be a knit stitch on the other side. So you can see there's my column of knits. So here's one, like here, these are knit stitches. If I'm going to just stick my needle through there and turn it around, on the other side, that was a stitch that I purled, right? So the purl stitches are really just knit stitches in reverse. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to knit these stitches as they appear to me. So that's a knit stitch. I'm going to knit it. The next one is a purl stitch. I'm going to purl that. And then the next one is a knit one again. I'm going to knit that. Next one is a purl. I'm going to purl that. And so on all the way across. You'll also notice that ribbing doesn't curl the way that straight up stocking stitch does. which I think is also a really helpful thing to know. Even with my little swatch, right, even back here, I've got 2 rows of garter stitch, but it still kind of wants to curl up, even though I've knit it and blocked it. So none of these stitch patterns curl the way that straight up stocking stitch curls. So that's also something useful to know. And the other one is seed stitch. So here's my seed stitch sample. I have a couple of rows of stocking stitch below it so that you can really see the contrast in the texture, right? This back down here is straight up stocking stitch. This is seed stitch, and you can see how nice and sort of nubby and textured it is. And here you're doing something very like the same thing as the rib stitch. You're alternating knits and purls, except on each row you're knitting the opposite, right? So as I come to this next, so my next stitch here, right, this is a purl. So if I was doing a ribbing, I would just purl that stitch, but I'm doing seed stitch, so I'm going to put the yarn to the back, and I'm going to actually knit what was a purl stitch previously. And now I'm going to purl what was a knit stitch. And now I'm going to knit this purl stitch and purl a knit stitch, knit that stitch, purl that stitch, knit that stitch, purl that stitch, and then when I turn it around to come across the other way, now I'm looking at the first stitch as a knit stitch, the next stitch is the purl, and then another knit. So I'm going to purl this one and then keep going, alternating between knits and purls. I hope that makes sense. It seems a little bit confusing when I listen to myself talking about it. But right, so this is a purl stitch. It's got the little bump. So for seed stitch, I'm actually going to want to knit that one rather than purl it. And there's a knit stitch that I'm going to want to purl. And that's how you get that nice nubby texture that we have here. Makes a nice, makes really nice scarves. And again, it's the same. It looks exactly the same on either side. So anything that's reversible looks really nice in seed stitch. Okay, so, and there are lots and lots of other ways to combine knits and purls in different ways to get different textural effects. And I'll share some of those with y'all.